A racist cop kicks a black woman. 3 minutes later, karma hits hard. This is one video you don't want to miss. Stay until the end. You will be shocked. The woman in this video is Jada. She is a hardworking single mother of 2. She works long hours to make ends meet. One evening, after a 12-hour shift at the hospital, Jada stops at a convenience store to buy milk. She's wearing scrubs. She looks tired, but peaceful. Inside the store, she notices 2 police officers. They are harassing a young teenager. The boy is scared. Jada steps in. She calmly asks, "Is there a problem, officer?" The cops turn to her. One of them smirks. He says, "Mind your business, lady." But Jada doesn't back down. She knows her rights. She replies, "I have every right to ask what's going on." That's when things take a turn. The taller cop, Officer Reynolds, steps closer. He's known in the neighborhood. Known for violence. Known for racism. He says, "You're obstructing justice." Jada says, "I'm just asking a question." Officer Reynolds grabs her arm. Jada pulls back. "I'm not resisting," she says. Then the unthinkable happens. Reynolds shoves her. She stumbles backward. The other cop, Officer Blake, walks up. Without warning, he kicks Jada in the stomach. She falls. Hard. People scream. Someone yells. She's a nurse. She didn't do anything. Another bystander pulls out a phone. He records everything. The cops panic. They shout at the crowd. "Back up. Back up." But it's too late. The video goes viral. Millions watch in horror. The video shows everything. The shove. The kick. Jada lying on the floor. Her groceries spilled. Tears in her eyes. 3 minutes later, karma comes. And it comes fast. Across town, the police chief gets a call. It's from the mayor. He says, "We've got a problem." The chief watches the video. His face goes pale. He knows this is bad. He picks up the phone. "Put Reynolds and Blake on leave." He says. Back at the precinct, Reynolds is laughing. Another one down. He jokes. But then his phone buzzes. Blake checks his too. They've both been suspended. Effective immediately. They're stunned. "What the hell?" Reynolds says. They rush to the chief's office. He looks angry. Very angry. He says, "You're done. Both of you." Internal Affairs is investigating. Outside, protesters gather. They hold signs. Justice for Jada. End police brutality. Stop racist cops. The video is playing on news stations. On social media. It's everywhere. Even celebrities share it. Hashtags trend. Hashtag Justice for Jada. Hashtag End Police Violence. Hashtag Accountability Now. Meanwhile, Jada is in the hospital. She has bruised ribs. She's shaken. But she's strong. She speaks to reporters. She says, "I just wanted to help that kid. I never thought this would happen." Her lawyer stands beside her. "We're filing a lawsuit," he announces. "And we will win." A few days later, things escalate. More evidence surfaces. Bodycam footage. Audio recordings. It proves everything. The officers lied in their report. They claimed Jada attacked them. But the footage says otherwise. It shows Jada calm. Polite. Peaceful. And it shows the violence clearly. The city reacts. The police chief holds a press conference. He says, "We do not tolerate this behavior. These officers have been terminated. It's not over yet." The DA steps in. Reynolds and Blake are charged. Assault. Excessive force. Filing a false report. They're arrested. In handcuffs. The same way they treated others. Now they know what it feels like. In court, Jada sits strong. The jury watches the video. The defense tries to twist the story. But it's no use. The evidence is clear. The jury returns the verdict. Guilty. Both officers. They're sentenced to prison. 5 years each. Outside the courthouse. People cheer. Justice was served. But Jada? She's not celebrating. She's healing. She says, "This isn't just about me. It's about all of us. It's about change." And she's right. After the trial, the city reforms its police department. New training. New leadership. New hope. Jada is offered a position on the community board. She accepts. Her voice is powerful now. She speaks at rallies. She mentors young women. She inspires. Because she lived through it. And survived. This is her story. This is karma. This is justice. And this is just the beginning. The story spreads far beyond the city. National news picks it up. Talk shows discuss it. Experts weigh in. Systemic issues. They say, this isn't just one case. It's a symptom of a larger problem. People listen. People talk. And slowly, things begin to change. Jada returns to work. Her co-workers greet her with hugs. Tears. Applause. She's a hero to them. Not just for what she endured. But for standing up. For not backing down. One afternoon. A young girl approaches her. She looks about 10. She says, "My mom said you're brave. I want to be brave like you." Jada kneels. Smiles. And says, "You already are." Meanwhile, Reynolds and Blake sit in prison. Their uniforms are gone. Their power, gone. No badges. No immunity. Just inmates now. Every day. They watch the news. They see what they've lost. What they threw away. In an interview from behind bars. Reynolds is asked, "Do you regret it?" He pauses. Looks down. And says, "I thought I was above the law. I was wrong." But Jada's not waiting for apologies. She's too busy building something better. She joins panels on police reform. She advises lawmakers. She becomes a public speaker. At one event, she says, "We can't fix what we won't face. And we've avoided facing this for too long." The room stands in ovation. People chant her name. This wasn't the life she planned. She never asked for fame. Or a spotlight. But she uses it. Not for herself. For others. She starts a foundation. It's called Rise Up. It helps victims of police violence. It gives them legal aid. Counseling. Support. Because Jada knows what it feels like. Alone. Afraid. Helpless. And she refuses to let anyone else go through that without help. She meets with families. She listens to their stories. She comforts them. And together, they begin to heal. Years pass. The video is still online. Still shared. Still remembered. New cases arise. But now, there's a movement. A network. And Jada is at its heart. She appears in documentaries. Books are written. One is called Kicked, but Not Broken. Her story is on the cover. A symbol of strength. In her speeches, she repeats one line. The kick didn't break me. It woke me up. She receives awards. Humanitarian awards. Civil rights honors. But her favorite moment? A letter. From the boy she tried to protect in the store. Now grown. He writes. You changed my life. That day, you stood up for me. Now I'm standing up too. I'm in college. Studying law. Because of you. Jada cries when she reads it. Not from sadness. From hope. From pride. Because one moment. One act. One voice. Can change everything. And she did. Her daughters grow up watching their mom make history. They're proud. They brag to their friends. My mom's a hero. And they're right. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear scrubs. And scars. And still smile. One day. She's invited to speak at the White House. She walks through the doors with grace. The president greets her. Jada. He says. Your courage has moved this nation. She stands at the podium. Her voice steady. Her message clear. This isn't just my story. This is all of our story. And it's time we write a new chapter. One with justice. With truth. With love. And the room erupts. Because they know. She means every word. Because she lived it. Because she rose from it. Because she is the voice of change. And it all started. With a question. Is there a problem, officer? A question that led to pain. To violence. To heartbreak. But also. To awakening. To justice. To a revolution. Jada walks off stage. Her daughters run into her arms. They whisper. You did it, Mom. She smiles. Tears in her eyes. And says. No, baby. We did. Because together. They rose. And nothing. Not hate. Not fear. Not even a kick. Could stop them. The world keeps moving. But the echo of Jada's story doesn't fade. In classrooms. Teachers play the video. Students watch silently. Then they talk. About justice. About rights. About standing up. In one school. A student raises her hand. She says. I want to be like her. Not afraid. And that's how change begins. Not in courts. Or in headlines. But in hearts. In choices. In courage. One night. Jada receives a call. It's from a young officer. New to the force. He says. I saw what happened to you. And I became a cop to stop it from happening again. Jada is silent. Then she says. Then wear that badge with honor. Serve with truth. And never forget who you protect. He replies. I won't. Moments like this remind her why she keeps going. Why she relives the pain. Why she speaks. Because change needs voices. Real ones. Wounded ones. Brave ones. She writes a memoir. The first sentence reads. I was kicked, but I stood back up. The book becomes a bestseller. It's translated into languages across the world. People in other countries write letters. They say. This happens here too. You give us strength. The ripple grows. Jada is invited to the United Nations. She speaks before leaders from every corner of the earth. She says, power must be accountable. If not, it becomes abuse. She finishes with, I was just trying to buy milk. The room falls silent. Then rises. A standing ovation. Her daughters watch from the front row. Their eyes wide. Their hands clapping. That night, they hug her tight. One says, I want to change the world too. Jada replies, you already are. Meanwhile, other victims find their voices. They come forward. They speak out. Inspired by her. Protected by the light she brought. No longer alone. One woman tells her, I thought no one would believe me. But when I saw you fight, I believed in myself. And Jada hugs her. Tight. Because she understands. Deeply. Everywhere she goes. People recognize her. They thank her. They cry. They smile. She listens to every story. Because every story matters. One day, she's at a book signing. A man approaches. He looks nervous. He says, I was a cop. And I want to say sorry. Not for what I did. But for what I didn't do. For staying silent. She looks at him. Nods. And says, silence allows harm. But you're speaking now. Start from here. He cries. Not out of guilt. Out of hope. Because even redemption is possible. If it's honest. Back in her city. The streets feel different. There's more awareness. More care. More accountability. The new police chief calls Jada often. They work together. They create new policies. Bias training. Community oversight. Civilian review boards. One reporter asks her, do you trust the police now? She thinks. Then says, I trust the ones who earn it. Simple. Powerful. True. Years go by. Jada keeps working. Speaking. Healing. Growing. Her daughters are teenagers now. Strong. Smart. Kind. Just like her. On the anniversary of the incident. The city holds a ceremony. They rename the street outside the store. It's now called Jada Lane. There's a plaque that reads, where one woman stood. And changed everything. She stands before it. Silent. A hand on her heart. Surrounded by family. Friends. Strangers who became allies. Because of that one moment. That one day. That one decision. To speak. To act. To care. Not everyone understood her journey. Not everyone supported her. But that never stopped her. Because truth doesn't need permission. At a conference. She ends her speech with this. I was kicked. But I rose. I was silenced. But I spoke. I was doubted. But I proved. And now. I lead. Thunderous applause. She smiles. Grateful. Humble. Ready. Because her work is far from done. There are still battles. Still injustice. Still pain. But there's also progress. Also hope. Also unity. Thanks to her. Thanks to Jada. A woman in scrubs. Buying milk. Who refused to look away. She didn't plan to be a symbol. But she became one. Not for what happened to her. but for what she did after. That's the legacy. Not the kick. Not the pain. But the rise. And it's a rise that keeps climbing. Higher. Louder. Stronger. One voice. One stand. One moment. That changed everything. Forever. In the quiet moments. Jada reflects. She sits on her porch. Tea in hand. Watching the sunset. She thinks about how far she's come. How much the world has changed. And how much more it needs to. She remembers the fear. The confusion. The helplessness. And how it turned to fire. Purpose. Conviction. Not every day is easy. There are setbacks. Failures. Disappointments. But she doesn't stop. She doesn't break. Because somewhere. Right now. Someone else is being mistreated. Someone else is being silenced. And they need to know. They're not alone. Jada becomes a mentor. She trains activists. Leads workshops. Writes essays. She helps others rise. She teaches them how. One student says, "You don't just speak truth. You teach us how to carry it." That's her power. Not just the voice. But the guidance. The vision. She gets invited to speak at schools. Even elementary ones. To kids. She kneels down. Meets their eyes. And tells them. You matter. Your voice matters. Never forget that. One little boy hugs her. He whispers. I want to be brave too. She smiles and says. You already are. The boy grows up. Years later. He becomes an attorney. And he tells the world. Jada inspired my first step. Her foundation, Rise Up, expands. They now have offices in 5 cities. They handle hundreds of cases a year. They've helped victims get justice. Helped communities get reforms. Helped families heal. One family tells her. You gave us hope when we had none. And that. More than any award. Means everything. Her daughters. Now in college. Major in political science and social work. They carry the torch. They continue the mission. One night. During a podcast interview. She's asked. What's your biggest accomplishment? She thinks. Then says. My daughters. Because they lead with love. And that's the kind of power we need most. Her story gets adapted into a movie. She consults on the script. She makes sure the message stays clear. It premieres at a major film festival. Standing ovation. People move to tears. After the screening. A young woman approaches her. Sobbing. She says. That was my story too. You gave it voice. Jada hugs her. No words needed. The film wins awards. But more importantly. It sparks conversation. Action. A senator references her case during a speech. Calls for federal reform. Mentions her name. The chamber applauds. She watches from home. Smiling. Not out of pride. Out of purpose. Because this is what she fought for. Not attention. But awakening. She continues to travel. Speak. Train. Support. Advocate. One day, she returns to the store. The one where it all began. It's under new management. The clerk recognizes her. Says. We're better now. Because of you. She walks the aisles. No fear this time. Only strength. And memory. She buys milk. Same brand. Same carton. She walks to the counter. Smiles. Pays. Leaves. Outside. She breathes in deep. A full circle. A healed moment. And somewhere. In the wind. You can almost hear it. The echo of resistance. The sound of a woman rising. And never falling back down. Her legacy becomes curriculum. Her case, a landmark. Her face, on murals. Her words, in textbooks. And still. She stays humble. Grounded. She volunteers at local shelters. She serves food. She listens. Because she never forgot. Where she came from. What she survived. And who she is. One evening. Her daughter asks. Mom, how do you stay so strong? She answers. I don't. I just remember why I started. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Soft. But steady. Jada knows that now. Knows the power of presence. Of resilience. Of standing tall. Even after falling hard. She starts writing again. Another book. This time. Not about trauma. But healing. It's titled. The Rise After. It debuts to critical acclaim. Reviewers call it profound. Necessary. Soul-shaking. But more than the reviews. Jada cares about the readers. The letters. The emails. People saying. This saved me. That's what she lives for. That's why she keeps going. Her voice. Once silenced. Now echoes across nations. Her pain. Once hidden. Now shared with purpose. Her power. Once dismissed. Now undeniable. And still. She smiles. She leads. She loves. Because that's who she is. Jada. A woman who rose. And kept rising. And brought the world with her. Years pass. The world keeps turning. New movements rise. New names take the stage. But Jada's name remains. Not as a headline. But as a foundation. A generation raised on her story. Now leads with purpose. They cite her in speeches. They honor her in marches. They remember. A school is named after her. The Jada Williams Institute for Social Justice. Its motto. Stand. Speak. Rise. Inside. Students learn about law. Civil rights. And compassion. They train not just to fight. But to listen. To lead with empathy. In the hallway. A mural stretches across the wall. It shows a timeline. Her life. Her journey. From the pavement. To the podium. Every student who walks those halls. Sees what's possible. What strength looks like. What courage can become. And in the library. There's a reading corner. With her books. And a plaque that reads. Your voice matters. Use it. On weekends. Jada visits the school. Reads to children. Talks to teens. Not as a celebrity. But as a guide. A witness. She tells them. You don't need to wait to be strong. You already are. Some cry. Some nod. All of them feel it. One student asks. How do we fix everything? She answers. You don't. But you change something. And that's enough to start. In another city. A street is renamed. Jada Way. It runs through the heart of downtown. Past the courthouse. The library. The shelter. The places she fought to protect. The mayor says, "This is not just a street. It's a statement." Tourists take pictures. Locals smile with pride. A name once tied to pain now represents progress. Meanwhile, Jada continues her work. Quietly. Faithfully. She starts a podcast. Unbroken. She interviews survivors. Leaders. Dreamers. Each episode. A story of rising. It gains millions of listeners. People say, "This saved me. This gave me hope. This helped me speak." Jada reads every message. Every email. Every letter. She replies when she can. Not with fanfare. Just gratitude. And presence. In an episode, she says, "I didn't plan to be a symbol. I just didn't want to stay silent." And that honesty, that raw truth, becomes her signature. Later that year, she receives a presidential medal. The highest civilian honor. The president says, Jada didn't just demand justice. She created a blueprint for it. She steps on stage. The crowd stands. She pauses. Then says, "I accept this. For every person who wasn't believed, who was silenced, who is still rising." Tears fall. Cameras flash. But her eyes stay on the people. Afterward, she meets with survivors backstage. Hugs them. Listens. Encourages. Because the medal is nice. But the real reward is knowing she helped someone stand. In her late years, Jada writes one more book. A memoir. Titled, "When They Tried to Break Me." The opening line reads, "They tried. But I remembered who I was." Critics call it essential. Brilliant. Unshakable. It becomes a staple in classrooms. In book clubs. In protests. In healing circles. People underline her words. Quote her in speeches. Tattoo her phrases on their skin. One tattoo reads, "I am not the wound. I am the fire." Another says, "She stood. So I could run." Because her words aren't just sentences. They're survival. They're resistance. They're truth. In an interview, a host asks, "What would you say to your younger self?" Jada closes her eyes. Smiles. Then whispers, "Keep walking. There's light ahead." And in that moment, it's clear. She is the light. A guiding force. A living legacy. A testament to what happens when courage refuses to quit. She receives thousands of birthday cards. Every year. From strangers. From kids. From families. They thank her. Not for being perfect. But for being real. For being present. Her daughters now have children. And they teach them her story. They tell them, "Your grandma changed the world. And you can too." One grandchild says, "I want to be brave like her." And everyone knows. They already are. Jada's photo hangs in city halls. In museums. In homes. Not as a symbol of suffering. But of transformation. Because she didn't just survive. She rose. And in doing so, taught others how. She often says, "If you only remember one thing, remember this. You are worth standing for." And in every protest, every speech, every whispered truth, that message echoes. Jada. The woman who stood. The voice that carried. The spark that lit 1,000 flames. And even now, as the world continues forward, her impact remains. Not in marble. Not in metals. But in people. In the brave. The broken. The bold. The ones who rise. Again. And again. And again. Because of her. On a quiet morning, Jada walks through a park. The air is crisp. Birds sing. Children laugh in the distance. She finds a bench beneath a tall oak. Sits. Closes her eyes. Breathes. A woman jogs past. Stops. Turns back. Are you? Jada smiles. Yes. The woman's eyes well up. You changed my life. I left an abusive marriage because of you. Jada rises. Embraces her. No words. Just strength exchanged in silence. They part. The woman jogs on. Jada sits back down. Smiles to herself. This, she thinks, is why I spoke. Why I stood. In a small town across the country. A teenage girl speaks at a school assembly. She's nervous. Voice shaking. But she says, I'm speaking today because I saw someone stand. And if she could do it, so can I. Her speech goes viral. And people ask her afterward. Where did you get the courage? She answers. From a woman named Jada. The ripple effect continues. Waves from one voice. Reaching countless shores. A filmmaker releases a documentary. The Stand, the Jada Williams story. It premieres at film festivals. Wins awards. Critics call it heartbreaking. Triumphant. Unforgettable. In it, old footage plays. Jada's first press conference. The early protests. The courtroom drama. And then, her laughter. Soft. Unshaken. Real. Audiences cry. Cheer. Some sit in silence after the credits. Moved. Transformed. In a Q&A. The director says. I didn't just want to tell her story. I wanted people to feel it. And they did. They still do. Back at home. Jada sits with her grandchildren. They ask her to tell the story again. She chuckles. You've heard it 100 times. But we like it. They say. And so she tells it. From the beginning. Every detail. Every pause. Every rise. And when she finishes. They ask. Are you scared of anything? She pauses. Then says. I used to be. But now. I'm more afraid of silence. Than I ever was of speaking. That night. They draw pictures of her. Crayons and markers. Big hair. Big smile. Bigger heart. They tape them on the fridge. Proud. Inspired. Loved. At a university lecture. A professor assigns her memoir. Students write essays. Hold discussions. One writes. She is the reason I want to be a lawyer. Another writes. She taught me what justice really means. And in the margins of the books. Students underline her sentences. Circle her phrases. Highlight her fire. Years later. That university establishes. The Jada Williams Chair in Human Rights Law. They invite her to speak. She says. Justice isn't a destination. It's a discipline. The room erupts in applause. Students rise. History is alive before them. And she, still radiant, still powerful, smiles gently. One student says, "Thank you for everything." She replies, "Just promise me you'll keep going." And they do. They carry it forward. A journalist asks her once, "Do you think you've done enough?" She laughs softly. "Enough? I did what I could. And that's all any of us can do." But everyone who hears her story knows she did more than enough. She did the impossible. She turned trauma into transformation. Silence into speech. Pain into purpose. She didn't just change the world. She awakened it. In a small cafe in a distant city, a group of young activists meets. They draft a new campaign. One of them wears a shirt that reads, "Be like Jada." On a bus, a man reads her book. A woman sitting nearby points. "That book saved me," she says. He nods. "I'm on that page now." And in these quiet, unseen moments, her legacy breathes. Not in buildings. Not in plaques. But in people. In change. In every whispered truth that finds its way to light. On her 80th birthday, her family throws a celebration. Friends. Survivors. Activists. Neighbors. They gather. They share stories. Laugh. Cry. Toast. And when Jada stands to speak, she simply says, "Thank you for walking with me." They chant her name. Not as a slogan, but as a song. A prayer. A promise. In her final years, she writes letters. To those still fighting. Still rising. Still hoping. Each one ends the same. "You are not alone. Stand anyway." Because that's what she did. She stood. Not just once. But always. And because of her, we all learned how. One day, a young woman stands at a podium. She's about to speak. Crowd buzzing. Palms sweating. She looks down at her notes. Then looks up. "I am here today," she begins, "because a long time ago, a woman refused to be quiet." The crowd leans in. The energy shifts. She stood up when it was dangerous. She kept speaking when the world told her to stop. She showed us all that silence isn't safety. It's surrender. Cheers. Applause. But she isn't finished. She was kicked. She was broken. But she wasn't destroyed. She rose. And because of that, so did we. She pauses. Tears in her eyes. Smiles. "Thank you, Jada." The crowd erupts. Chants her name. Jada. 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 Across the world. In a refugee camp, a girl clutches a worn copy of Jada's memoir. She can't read it all yet. But she's learning. She traces the letters. She whispers the name. She knows it by heart. In another country, a protest erupts. Brutality again. Injustice again. But this time, the people are ready. They wear shirts with Jada's quotes. They chant her words. They hold the line. And in their eyes, that same fire burns. Unyielding. Unbroken. A reporter asks one of them, "Why are you out here?" The protester lifts a sign. It reads, Because someone once stood for me. Now it's my turn. Years pass. Decades. Jada's great-granddaughter stands at a podium. She's receiving an award. The Jada Williams Courage Medal. Established in her honor. Awarded each year. To someone who rose. When they could have fallen. She holds it high. Then says. This isn't just for me. This is for my family. For my people. For my great-grandmother. She turns to the giant photo behind her. Jada, smiling. Strong. Unshaken. She showed me. What courage really is. Later that night. She posts a picture. Caption reads. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you plant. And oh. How Jada planted. Every word. Every action. Every stand. A seed. And now. They bloom. Across nations. Across hearts. Across time. In art galleries. Murals of her face. Bold colors. Strong lines. Eyes that follow you. Remind you. Inspire you. In theaters. Plays about her life. Actors reenact the day she stood. Audiences weep. Rise to their feet. Say. I will never forget this. In churches. Her story is told from pulpits. As a parable. A lesson. A calling. She stood in truth. The preacher says. And the truth set us free. In schools. Children learn her name. Before they learn history. Because she is history. Living. Breathing. Eternal. And in everyday life. In quiet homes. On busy streets. In whispered prayers and shouted demands. Her spirit lingers. Because she didn't ask to be a hero. She just refused to be a victim. And in doing so. Became both. A warrior. And a witness. One last time. We return to the park. That same bench. That same tree. The leaves rustle. The sun sets. A young woman sits where Jada once did. She's nervous. Thinking. Planning. She opens her notebook. Starts writing. On the top line. She writes. Chapter 1, I stood. And so it begins again. A new voice. A new fight. A new stand. But the foundation remains. Jada's strength. Now part of the earth itself. She may no longer walk these streets. But her footsteps echo. In the bold. In the brave. In the next. Because a legacy like hers. Doesn't end. It evolves. So whenever you feel small. Afraid. Unseen. Remember her. Remember the woman who stood. When she was supposed to fall. And then stand. In her name. In your name. In the name of justice. Because you can. Because you must. Because she did. Jada Williams. She stood. And the world was never the same. Years later. At a quiet memorial site. A statue stands. It's her. Strong. Head high. Hands open. Feet planted like roots. The plaque reads. She stood. So we could rise. People visit from all over. They touch the bronze hand. Leave flowers. Notes. Shoelaces from marches. Photographs. Tears. One child asks their mother. Was she a queen? The mother kneels. Smiles. Says. No, baby. She was greater than that. She was brave. Across oceans. Her story is translated into dozens of languages. From classrooms in Seoul, to radio stations in Nairobi, to podcasts in Sao Paulo. The message is the same. Stand. Speak. Survive. Shine. Everywhere her name is spoken, change follows. Not just in systems. Not just in laws. But in hearts. In souls. In the unspoken promise that we will not go quietly. In the halls of government. A senator cites her in a speech. Calls her an architect of justice. In hospitals. Doctors tell survivors. You are safe here. And strong, just like Jada. In courtrooms. Judges remember her trials. Her dignity. Her pain. Her persistence. And in living rooms. Families sit together. Watching the film of her life. Mothers hold daughters. Fathers nod solemnly. Children ask questions. Begin to understand. Her presence is felt. Not just in memory. But in movement. A global network is formed. The Jada Collective. Millions of people. Connected by her story. United by purpose. Fueled by truth. They meet online. In person. In protest. In peace. Their slogan is simple. One voice can shake the world. And it does. Again. And again. Each time someone refuses to be silent. Her spirit smiles. Each time someone chooses courage over comfort. She lives on. And not just in the big moments. But in the quiet ones, too. A teacher defending a student. A worker reporting abuse. A child saying no when it matters most. These are echoes of her power. Proof that one stand can lead to countless others. A museum opens an exhibit in her honor. Not just of artifacts. But of actions. Footage. Testimonies. Letters. Marches. Songs. Poems. An entire wall is filled with words she inspired. The quote above it. Write your truth. Say it loud. Let it echo. A mother walks through with her son. He points to a picture of her in handcuffs. Asks. Why did they do that to her? She answers. Because she was brave. In a time when they wanted fear. He nods. Then says. I want to be brave, too. In the final room of the exhibit. A mirror. Visitors stand before it. Their reflection framed by her words. Now. It's your turn. And so it continues. In high schools. Debates rage. In podcasts. Episodes drop. In libraries. Books fly off shelves. Everywhere. Her fire lights new ones. She never asked for this. Never sought fame. She just knew. She couldn't be silent. And in doing so. Became a light. In every shadow. At a graduation ceremony. A student gives a speech. Says. I failed. I almost gave up. But then I remembered her. And I rose. The crowd claps. Tears fall. Caps fly. At a wedding. A couple recites vows. Inspired by her words. I promise to stand beside you. To speak truth with you. To rise. Even when it's hard. Love. Justice. Hope. All rooted in her stand. At the end of one documentary. Her voice plays over the closing credits. She says. Don't wait for the world to tell you it's your time. Make it your time. Stand. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your knees tremble. Even if you stand alone. Because someone will see you. And they will stand, too. And that is how it works. That is how we win. Not all at once. Not with explosions. But with footsteps. With truth. With the steady, unyielding power of standing. And so, the years passed, yet her influence never waned. It didn't need to. Her words, her actions, had sparked a revolution that lived far beyond her lifetime. The world, once burdened by silence, had been reshaped by the courage of a single woman who dared to stand tall. In cities around the world, monuments rose, not of marble, but of people who took her message to heart and made it their own. They stood in solidarity with those without voices. They fought for justice not as a fleeting moment but as a continuous force that shaped laws, cultures, and hearts. Her name became synonymous with resilience, with the quiet power of resistance, with the unbreakable will to stand firm in the face of adversity. A young artist, inspired by her legacy, created a mural on the side of a building in a bustling city square. The mural showed her, but not as a statue, alive, moving, with fire in her eyes, her hand outstretched toward the horizon. Beneath it, in bold letters, the words read, "To rise, we must first stand." Locals would pause, some young, some old, to stare at the vibrant work of art. It reminded them, just like the statue, of something important, that they, too, could choose to stand, choose to speak, and choose to change the world around them. At a global conference, a group of activists gathered in her name. Their voices united in a powerful message that rippled across the globe: stand for what is right, no matter the cost. It was no longer just about the fight she had started, it was about every fight she had inspired, each person taking their turn to rise. The fight for equality, for justice, for every soul who had been told to be quiet. As technology advanced, her story was reimagined. Virtual reality tours took people through the pivotal moments of her life, from her earliest defiant acts to the courage she displayed in the face of overwhelming challenges. These experiences left people with an indelible sense of purpose, a deep understanding that one voice, no matter how quiet it may seem, can echo louder than all the rest. In classrooms, teachers used her words to teach not just history, but the essence of being human. Students were asked to write essays on what it meant to stand, what it meant to rise. The answers were as diverse as the children who wrote them, but they all shared one thing: a belief that change was possible, and they could be the ones to carry it forward. A new generation rose, not because they were born into a world of justice, but because they were born into a world where the power to create it had been given to them. They looked to the statue, the walls of words, and the walls in their own hearts, and found the courage to speak out when their voices trembled. One quiet afternoon, years after the first words of her story had been shared, a letter arrived at the memorial site. It was from a woman who had grown up in a country far away, one where her voice had once been silenced by fear, by laws, by oppression. But she had found strength, as the letter read, from the echoes of a woman I never met, but whose courage taught me how to be free. The plaque, the statue, the museum, the voices, all of them were a testament to the reality that this movement, this power, could never be erased. It lived on in the hearts of those who chose not to be silent. It lived in every small act of courage, every refusal to give up, every refusal to let injustice pass unnoticed. As long as there were people who believed that standing up was worth the fight, her story would never end. It would only grow stronger, like the roots of a tree reaching deeper into the soil, growing beyond the limits of what we can see. And at the center of it all, she remained. Not as a statue, not as a memory, but as a living force that thrived in the hearts of all those who refused to stay quiet. Because when one voice stands, it can shake the world, and that voice was hers. And through every stand that followed, she would rise again. And then, in the most unexpected of moments, a storm stirred on the horizon. It was a movement, one that began as a whisper but soon became a roar, a final stand for justice that would unite the world in ways even she had never imagined. The air was thick with tension. Governments trembled. Corporations that had long profited from silence were on edge. The forces that had tried to keep society divided, scared, and compliant began to feel the pressure. This was not a fight that could be ignored, not one that could be dismissed. This was a reckoning. The Jada Collective, now a massive global force, was not just an organization, it was a revolution. A peaceful one, but one with an intensity that no one could deny. It was an unstoppable wave that washed over every corner of society, reaching beyond the privileged spaces of power and straight into the heart of every community that had ever been overlooked. It was led by people who had once felt unheard, but now they stood together, united in one powerful message. It's time to rise. The call came in the form of a worldwide event. Protesters filled the streets, yes, but more than that, the quiet ones, the ones who had been waiting for this moment their whole lives, stood up in every home, office, and school. On that day, the world saw a sight it had never witnessed before, people of all walks of life, all races, all beliefs, all backgrounds, holding hands, standing tall, all united under the same banner of truth. Television screens flickered with news coverage of the protests, and then it happened. The world shifted. In one city, the air was thick with anticipation as a group of young students, inspired by her, held a peaceful sit-in outside a government building. The authorities, who had for years dismissed similar actions, now found themselves at a crossroads. The eyes of the world were on them. This was not just one isolated act, this was part of something bigger, something unstoppable. The pressure was building. At the same time, in a distant courtroom, a trial that had once seemed like any other began to take on monumental proportions. A survivor, emboldened by the stories of those who had stood before her, now stood at the center of a legal battle that would forever change the way justice was served. The courtroom was packed, not with just legal experts, but with people who had come to witness history. They came because they knew that, like Jada, this was the moment where everything could change. They stood behind her with courage and conviction, knowing that the world was watching. And then, just as the case was nearing its climax, something extraordinary happened. From across the globe, messages of support poured in, people tweeting, emailing, posting on every platform, holding up signs with her name, with her words, saying, "We stand with you." It was a pivotal moment, one that turned the tide. As the judge read the verdict, it was clear, justice had been served. The truth had been heard, and it had reverberated across continents. The case had set a precedent, one that would inspire future generations to come forward, to speak out, and to demand the truth. At the same time, in the streets, the protesters did not waver. They did not tire. They raised their voices in unison, their chants echoing through the streets, through the walls of power. It was the final push that cracked the old systems wide open. And as the leaders of the movement gathered in the heart of the city, ready to address the world, a figure appeared in the distance. Her presence was not visible in the form of a person, but in the form of everyone who had ever stood, ever spoken, ever refused to back down. The ground beneath them seemed to hum with the energy of history being written in real time. And then, as the crowd quieted, the words were spoken aloud. "We are the revolution. We are the change. And we will never be silenced again." It was the echo of her spirit. It was the culmination of everything she had fought for, everything she had stood for, everything she had given. And in that moment, the world knew. It wasn't just the system that had been transformed, it was the hearts of every individual who had ever doubted their own power. It was a world that could no longer be governed by silence, by fear, by complacency. No, this world was one where truth stood tall, where people rose together, and where the echoes of one voice became the rallying cry for the entire planet. And in that moment, when every heart beat as one, her voice, though no longer heard in the physical world, lived on, louder than ever before. Because she had stood. And the world, finally, rose with her.